Hello, everyone, to this week's Tech Excellence session.
Sorry, I don't see the go live. If you could just recheck.
It is. So, for most of you already know probably, our vision is to raise the bar of technical excellence across the world. Who are we? Well, we are Valentina, who is the founder and organizer of Tech Excellence, but also me, Oliver, and Daniel are co-organizers and also co-hosts. How do we actually want to raise the bar of technical excellence? Well, it's with sessions like those that we have now. So we had lots of great speakers already in the past, and we will continue to have great speakers also in the future. You can follow us on the typical social media like Meetup, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and also GitHub. Our sponsor is Optivem, and one of our partners is QE Unit. But now to our speaker for today. It's Khaled Souf. He's a passionate globe-trotting developer, architect, trainer, and coach based in Annecy, France. Today, he will hopefully show us how practices of domain-driven design can be used to rescue legacy code. I hope I have paraphrased it correctly. And I'm very, very excited to hear about that because I'm also very interested in domain-driven design. Not so much into legacy code. I always try to avoid it, but if we can introduce DDD into it, even better. So before I hand over to Khalid, I want to remind the audience that you are very much encouraged to write any comments down below into the YouTube comment section, and we will take those comments afterwards to talk and discuss about them. But now I give over to Khalid.
Hi. So today's subject is domain-driven design to the rescue of legacy code. So we're gonna have to, let's say, merge two words: the legacy system or the legacy code and domain-driven design. What is really in most of the case doesn't happen often, but it's something that many people try to do, to merge these words, especially when they are in a legacy context. And I'm going to show you with some tools of DDD that is going to be very helpful to you. So before starting, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. So I'm actually what you call a Globe-trotter developer, or let's say a nomad developer, because so far I worked like in 4 countries, in like 3 continents. I'm also one of the co-founder of SOCRATES Canada, who is actually the conference of software craftsmanship and tests. I'm also one of the co-organizers of the Switzerland Romandy Software Crafters meetup. Usually I talk about domain-driven design, test-driven development, clean code, refactoring, and a lot of stuff about the software crafters movement. So before we start, let's define the problem actually. What is actually a legacy code? So there is a multiple definition that you're going to find. It can be something like a code that actually I created and somebody is maintaining it. So it's my legacy to that person. It can be different. I can be like let's say, taking over a code that somebody wrote it. This is what I call legacy code. Michael Feathers, who is the author of Working Effectively with Legacy Code, his definition is actually it's a code without a test. Why is that? Because the test is actually the first user. It's going to be a documentation of that code, a documentation about how that code is behaving. So if you lose all of that, actually what we are losing here, well, nobody knows how it works. Nobody knows why it works. So we are losing what we call knowledge. We don't know how the work is actually working and how it should work. So how the code works is actually the actual behavior, and how the code should work is actually the expected behavior or the expectation how the code should work. So first of all, let's deep dive to get that knowledge back, even if it lost, even if the person that, let's say, build that product is lost somewhere. So how we should do it? We need to find that person at all costs, because that's where we're gonna get all the knowledge needed to do our stuff. So how do we picture it? So one of the tools that I usually use from DDD is event storming. So you gather a lot of people, like you see here, in the same room. And usually when we say we gather these people, you're gonna have two types of people: those who have questions and those who have answers. And sometimes it's not one person that know everything. Sometimes the knowledge can be, every piece of knowledge can be, let's say, I will not say detained, but it's going to be known by one of the member of the team. So together they create the whole picture. So you need these people. You need an unlimited modeling space, so some place that you can model that. And you start by exploring domain events. So what we call domain events is something that happened in the past, like in the past sentence, and then you're gonna put these stickers in order of the timeline. I will not explain the workshop in details. I will let you explore it on your own. You can check the book of Alberto Brandolini, the creator of this, let's say, this approach that is well known in DDD community. So here we have one way to do it, but sometimes event storming is not really enough to do that. So to complement that, we're gonna use what we call domain storytelling. Why is that? Because event storming is actually, let's say, only showing the flow and only showing the event that happens. But we don't see an interaction. We don't see who is doing what. So there is some small pieces sometimes that they are missing. So how do we do domain storytelling? You take somebody who knows the business. Now you know who knows the business. Why? Because with event storming, you already have figured out who knows what exactly. You picture the business process step by step, using the domain storing terminology that we're going to see after. And every, let's say, several steps is going to be sentences. And from sentences, you're going to create a story. So a story is actually multiple sentences. So how it looks like, here how it looks like. So you have a customer here who asks us for a reservation for a movie. The cashier here heard that. So what he gonna try to find available seats, okay, from the ticket system. And from there, the cashier gonna recommend some seats to the customer. And the customer, they're gonna confirm the offered seat to the cashier. From there, the cashier, what he's gonna do is make a reservation for the customer. And he's gonna transmit that reservation number to the customer. This is how domain storytelling is working, how it's working. So you can do it for even many complex, let's say, stories, but I recommended to do it in a small scope. And then if you try to get on a bigger scope, redo it again. The same case also for event storming. If you do it, remove the board and redo it again. Because what is really interesting, it is not doing the stuff. It's not actually like the result of the stuff is doing the stuff. So it's not the model activity, if you call it a model activity, it's going to be modeling. So this is what really interesting, because what you learn from that is better even from what you have on the wall, if you are using Google. Yeah. So there is two things that you need to be careful when you do these activities. Let's say two type of profiles that I've seen when you do these kind of activity. There is what we call the dungeon master and what I call existing system expert. So what I'm talking about, I'm gonna explain myself. The dungeon master is actually one of the first developer or the first contributor to that product, to that legacy system. And actually, even if he move it in the hierarchy, or even if he move it to some other place, he's still not far away from the legacy system itself. So it can be something good, it can be something bad. So that's why I'm gonna show you how I usually do it to get the most benefit from that person without taking the bad sides. First of all, if he's still the developer, I'm going to do a mob or a pair programming session. I'm going to do a mob. Why? Because if there is already existing developer, they're going to benefit from that. Also, they're going to learn many things about the system that nobody knows about it, but only the dungeon master knows about it. So I'm going to only add a rule to that. He is not allowed to touch the keyboard. Why? Because he needs to be in position of somebody who tells the other to how to do it, or maybe somebody who gonna advise them. That's how we create some kind of connection. So he is forced to be connected to the others when doing things. The other thing that I usually do is I do what we call a scratch refactoring. And if you look to working effectively with legacy code of Michael Feathers, he called that lean to the compiler. So what I'm usually do is like create a branch. If you are talking about any, let's say, any system of versioning, I know that branch, I'm going to kill it after some time because I'm going to play with it. I'm going to try to remove some kind of files and then rerun and try to figure it out what doesn't compile so I can make some kind of graph of dependencies. And I'm going to ask the dungeon master why this thing doesn't work. Is it like linked to that? I'm going to try to have more information about it, because like, we all forget what we did before, but if something happens, we're going to say, oh yeah, I remember that thing, we've done it because of that or that or that. So that's what I'm trying to get from him, and I'm going to try to note everything about that. Okay, so the other thing also that you need to know that the dungeon master is really dangerous, because usually if that person, let's say, move to another country, or there is something happening to that person, you're going to lose all that knowledge forever. So you need always to have some kind of shared knowledge between the team. It's one of the first aspect for extreme programming. The knowledge should be shared. Sometimes it's not possible because we need to do it fast, so we ask him. But at some point, we need to. Everybody in the team need to know how it works. So also they can relieve also the dungeon master from that, from the stress and from burnout also. We're gonna see the other type of profile that you need to be careful of. The existing system expert. Who is it? Usually it's somebody who knows the domains, thinks he knows the domain, so the business side, but actually know how the system works. Because the system is actually something that is built by a vision, but we are not sure that vision is actually how the business process is working. Well, he can be many things. He can be one of the first of product owners, or maybe the business analyst, a user, a QA engineer, because he know almost how every part of the system works. It can be a lot of person, and it can be also somebody who was a developer at some point and then move it to more like business role to the team. So this is who is actually what I'm called an existing system expert. So to compare him to the dungeon master, the dungeon master is like the super developer that you find in many teams, and the system expert is like the super user who know every feature about the system. So first of all, if you'd like to get the most information that you need from them, he need to give you what we call like a tour guide, sightseeing about the whole system, how it works, every feature. You're gonna try to figure out, to learn everything, to try to understand why we have that feature and all that stuff, and how they actually test the application, if he's like in the QA role, and how he actually, if you ask him about a feature, how he thinks that should be tested. And sometimes I've seen that, and it's really some nice surprise that you can find when you have that kind of person. Sometimes they create some kind of like automated testing, or maybe semi-automated testing. So it's something like they run it locally to test that everything is okay, the application is good, everything is working well. So these are the kind of person that you need to reach. And like I said, you need to take all the knowledge that they have, and after that you need to take what is good and remove what is bad, because not everything is good. And it's not really the fault of this person, it's the system, how it was built, because there is a history, there is a legacy that came from it. So try to be as helpful as possible to them, especially because they are the one that maybe suffer the most usually in these systems. So after you get everything, now you can have some kind of big picture. So try to make a list of all the features that you have, identify them, try to figure it out if there is maybe some hidden feature that nobody knows about it, but many users are using it. Try to monitor the behavior of the users. Don't ask people how the user are using the application. Try to catch the behavior of the users and check what are the features that they are in use. If you can remove them, do it. If you can't, mark them as deprecated, so you know that this feature actually is not as critical as most of the people they think. Okay. One of the other things that you need to check, if there is a shift for the core domain. What I'm trying to say when I'm saying shift of the core domain is something like this. So usually you start with, you know that I'm gonna give an example for that. Let's talk about a big company that will not say its name. They started by building a game, and then they created some kind of channel to communicate between gamers. At some point, when they try to monitor the behavior of the users, they found out that actually the users, they are mostly interested more in the channel than the game itself. So they removed completely the game, that was their core domain, and they shifted to their business model to only create that channel, improve that channel, and do that channel until it is like one of the best in the world. That company is actually Slack, if you know the story about Slack. So what I'm trying to say is like, try to figure it out. What was the core domain and where it should be moved, and what is actually now the core domain. It's very important because you're gonna be more focused on core domain, and the supporting domain is gonna be something just enough. The generic domain is like something that can be used from your organization that already existing there. This one is really interesting because if you have implemented something here or here, and then with time you discover that it shouldn't be here, it should be something in the supporting, and then you discover that there is already, or maybe a new tool that is doing it right now, you can remove it from the supporting and use the supporting domain and use actually the generic one, the one that is provided by the organization. So what I'm trying to say is like, time is really very important when you do these things, because you shouldn't be judging the let's say the people that they are working in the system. The system is there because there is many things that happened. The decision that were taken before, they were taking maybe because it was the right time to take them that way. They were the right decisions. So never judge them after like 5 or 6 years or 7 years, because everything changed. This is one aspect that I learned actually when I do this. The other one is actually try to make this kind of decision reversible. Why? Because if you made them irreversible, you are saying that my system cannot evolve. So try to make them reversible, because if you are humble enough, you know that today you're right, tomorrow maybe it's wrong what you are doing. So that's why try to figure out a way to make all your decision, especially these one about the domains, reversible. Okay, so now we've seen what we can do. But one of the other things also that I do usually is I play the tester. So I'm trying to put myself as a user. I try to run some kind of typical scenarios alone without the help of anyone, so I can do it on my own. And also I'm checking by that all the information that I get. Did I learn what it should be learned? Did I miss something? Did I understand correctly? And if I can, and in this small case, I'm going to try to implement or maybe automate some kind of test, give them back to the people, try to figure it out if you can make it. It can be like integrated on, especially on building pipelines or in deployment. So it can be something that gonna improve even by little bit their day-to-day, let's say, life. One of the great things also I think is very helpful is trying to intercept all the input and the output of the system. And I'm talking about the technical one. And from these technical, let's say, event, or let's say technical interaction, I'm going to try to extract some kind of event. From there, I'm going to use this wonderful, let's say, tool that is called bounded context canvas. And I'm going to try to write down everything that's going to be as an input to my system and everything as an output of the system. This is when I'm talking about using DDD as a tools. You can have also something else that you really like. If you'd like something that mainly focusing on the system itself, you can use the C4 model of Simon Brown to do that also. So this is one of the things that I usually do. I add a description here about the system, and like if it is like a domain, a specific domain or something, I'm gonna try to give it some kind of specific stuff to say, okay, it's a core one, so I need really to focus on it. It's a supporting one, I need to focus on it, but it's not as much important as a core one. It's a generic one, okay, that's not my stuff, I'm gonna only need to integrate myself to it. That's very good. I like when that is that way, so I can focus more on my core domain. And I'm gonna try to figure it out. What are, let's say, the semantics, the element of language that they are using in that domain. Try to master them, because every time you go to a new domain, you're gonna learn a lot of stuff. That's actually what is really cool about our work, because every time we go to another domain, healthcare or something, or like, I don't know, if you are talking about any kind of let's say domain, we're gonna learn something new. So after that, now actually, in my opinion, we have enough confidence to start doing really some, let's say, some strategic like implementation or some strategic like actions. So most of the case, I'm going to say that there is always 3 types of choices that we need to do, based on how much confidence we are understanding the legacy system. So the first one, we have a really low level of confidence. So what we're going to do is like, okay, we're going to push back the legacy system. We're going to expose it as a service. It can be as an API, for example, or it can be something else. It can be like, I don't know, it can be like an integration using database table. I already seen that. And use what we call the open host service. Those who doesn't know what is the open host service, check context mapping in the DDD book of Eric Evans. Open host service is actually saying that we have a system, we have something, we want to expose it, but not as it is. We're going to expose it with limitation, or maybe with some kind of transformation of the information, and we're going to publish it as it is, and then somebody else going to use it. And that somebody else is actually a new context that we are creating for the new feature. We call that a bubble context in DDD. And this is how it should look like. So here the open host service is exposing all what happens in the legacy system without actually exposing the complexity legacy system to the bubble context. So we're going to simplify here and do a lot of mapping, and also a lot of something that underneath that these bubble contexts don't need to know about. This is the first, let's say, strategy that I usually do. The second one is actually when I have some kind of, let's say, some kind of medium level of confidence. I will create the bubble context when I have a new feature, but now I know some few stuffs about the legacy system. So the bubble context themselves, they're gonna create some kind of what we call an anti-corruption layer that gonna call the legacy system, but call, let's say, the use case service layer. So it's like I know the use case, how to call certain use case of the legacy system. So I'm gonna call them directly, and then I'm gonna do that kind of mapping inside my bubble context to protect him from the structure that I have a legacy system. And this is how it looked like. Here you have your mapping. Here we have the call to the use case. The same here. Maybe it can be the same use case or maybe something different, but I think usually it's going to be the same. And this case is actually better than the last one that you've seen. Why? Because here we know that these use cases are actually clean. So that's why we are calling them. We are confident about that, how the use case is behaving. So we are sure about that. In case that you have a high level of confidence, so like you find, you know, everyone that knows the system, now you know the system like everything, it doesn't have any secret to you. So you can create the bubble context in different cases, in a new feature, or even if you have trying to fix something. How do you do that? You took the code that you know that had the bug, you move it to a new context, you refactor it, you clean it, you test it, you do a lot of stuff. Even I prefer that you do the test before you move it. And when it is really cleaned, you are already starting to, let's say, to kill the legacy system little by little. So it's like divide and conquer in this case. And in this case, because you have so much confidence, if you need to call the legacy system, you're gonna call the low-level operation of the legacy system because you are mastering the internals of the legacy system. And this is how it looks like. So here is like you're gonna have many anti-corruption layer. Why? Because I'm calling the low level of the legacy system. Here, here, and here, and here. And it's gonna be usually different. Well, what I'm trying to say is like these three approaches that you already seen, you can combine them. They are not exclusive. Depending on the part of the system that you master or not, you can combine them. And that's completely fine. But don't be overconfident about that, because I've done there before. My confidence, I gain it about knowing the system if I test it fully and they know exactly how we do it and they have proof, and my proof is the tests. This is how I usually do it, because I don't have enough confidence on my judgment without the tests. So to wrap up, only take an action. When I'm saying take an action, extracting, refactoring, if there is an opportunity, if there is something that is coming to do that. If you don't do it. Try to understand how the legacy system works by using event storming. Do as much as possible also mob and pair programming with the people that are working there. And like I said before, work wisely with the dungeon master and the existing system expert, because there is some few things that you can take from them, and there is other things that you shouldn't take from them. So it's going to be your own judgment about that. And like I said before, because depending on the slice of the system that you can have a different level of confidence about the legacy system. In this case, what you should do is, okay, every case is going to be something different. So you can have a low-level anti-corruption layer, a higher level one, and even an open host service. And at some point also, when you see that you are repeating the same like operation, you can move them in the same anti-corruption layer, or maybe in an open host service that you're going to expose to the others. And the others, they're going to use these, let's say combined operations. Okay, so if you need some reference about the talks, my reference is actually The Rise and Fall of Dungeon Master by Alberto Brandolini. The other one is like I'd like you to see a lot and also continue all the time to see it, is the DDD Crew GitHub repository. Sorry. You have everything there, and it's always up to date. They are updating that all the time. And thank you. Any question? I know the presentation is really a little bit small because I'd like to take time to answer any question that you have.
Well, thank you, Khalid, for this presentation. So I see in the chat that we have one comment. Let's wait for it. So Nicolina asks, when you were talking about analyzing if anything changed in the domain, you advised to make reversible decisions. Could you go into that a bit more, into more detail? I actually wondered about that one too.
Okay, this is actually very, very good question. Yes. So one of the things that I usually do to make, like, if I choose, I'm gonna make an example. If you choose, for example, some kind of framework that need to be working, like some kind of library for PDF or for exporting PDF, or for let's say exporting CSV. Usually, I use some kind of architecture that all the people in DDD, they know about, what is called hexagonal architecture, that is actually introduced by Alistair Cockburn. So usually I separate by folder, every technology by folder. Why? Because I need to switch from one choice, like for CSV or PDF, I know that is going to be only on that folder. I'm mastering it, I'm sure about it, so I'm going to do it. So this is one of the cases that usually do it. The other thing that also I do it in case of the business, I always isolate the business from the technical decision. So if I'm using a technical tool, I'm going to try to isolate that technical tool, and in the same time, I will try to make it that it does not corrupt my business. Let's say my business, like objects or my business file. This is how I call them. This is one way to do some decision reversible.
So we basically, it's similar to clean architecture. You try to put everything, like the details, into the adapters, and you want to have the business basically independent of the details.
Exactly. It's exactly the same.
Yeah. Well, the problem with legacy is probably that it's very, very hard to convince people to do it afterwards, after the fact. So, I mean, you could ask, how can I actually get it into my code, into my legacy code?
Well, it's actually a very good question, this one. So usually how I do it like small piece by small piece. Mm-hmm. Every time I have an opportunity, I create some kind of, a new folder that is really in the same, let's say, level of the older one. And in that folder, I will try to keep myself as clean as possible. And I'm going to build that new, let's say, architecture. And every time that somebody is touching something outside of that, they're going to try to figure it out if he can move it to the new architecture and clean it there. Mm-hmm. So it's like the transition is something that is going to take years. You can't do it in one way, that's for sure. You're going to try to create foundation, push the idea to the people, and they try to figure it out how they can do it at the long term.
Mm-hmm.
This is really interesting. I just wanted to add to this. Sorry for that. This transformation into legacy, basically what you're saying here, it's an incremental transformation into the new architecture, that you start the new architecture and then you're incrementally transferring to achieve that kind of separation.
Exactly. And why I'm doing that, because if you try to do it in one go, you're going to have multiple problems. One of them is actually the business, they're going to wait for you and going to say, there is no feature, there is no bug fixing. What are you doing? And we don't understand what you are doing. Even if you try to explain to them, it's going to be very, very hard to answer that. That's the first thing. So because it's a technical problem, so it should be managed by ourselves as a technical, let's say, service. The other thing is actually, like I said before, take every step as an opportunity. You can't build a house in a day. You need like 6 months or 7 months. So you need to be patient when you do it, and you need to wait for the right opportunity to do it. It's frustrating, I know that, and I happen to be very frustrated when I try to do it, but we need to be patient and we need to do it professionally. So that's why we need to wait for the right opportunity. And every time you get a bug fix, a feature, first question that you need to ask yourself, okay, so how should I do to move this kind of stuff to my clean side and clean it there, and in the same time giving value to the customer. Maybe I'm going to give less value than before, but I'm still continuing to give value to them.
How would you actually test it? I mean, the first thing you probably would do is you add some kind of test, but it's legacy code, so you would probably do some pin down test or something.
Okay, so there is some kind of type of test that I like a lot, depending on the confidence of the system. One thing that usually, from my experience, from what I understood, is unit test with legacy code is out of question. You shouldn't do it. Why? Because you know that the architecture is not really what you're looking for, and it's going to be complicated to have these kind of tests. What I'm trying to say is, like, when I'm testing a legacy code, I test it as a whole system. And the type of tests that need to be done, it can be something like a testing of whole scenarios, like I said before, with the system expert, or maybe with one of the QA user. This one is really very hard to find, but if you find them in the legacy system, it's like a mine of gold. So these people is really something if you find them. There is also another type of test that was described in many books. Why I'm saying in many books? Because every author is naming it differently. Michael Fears named them characterization testing. Emily Bash named them approval testing. Some kind of people, they call them snapshot testing. Okay, I will take all three of them because it's the same thing, or golden master test. These kind of tests is really the thing that you should do with legacy. How it works is actually you are validating the output, even if the output there is something that is bad inside. So it's like testing a snapshot, taking a snapshot and verify that the behavior does not change. So when you are refactoring or cleaning, you know that you didn't change the behavior, even if that behavior is bad. It's very good when you try to refactor and have this kind of test.
Mm-hmm. when you extract something, I mean, you need to resolve to save refactorings then. So basically, you can do an extract method and move. That's the most you can do. Or...
Exactly. You will not do it manually. You're gonna use your IDE, or you shouldn't be overly confident when you do it. So you need to have the lesser confidence as much as possible, because you're dealing with something that you don't master. When I'm saying something that you don't master, what I mean that you don't know actually what you are doing. So that's why you need this kind of, it's like the analogy that I have in mind is like you are in a dark room and you need some kind of light from there and from there to see where you are going, and you are looking at something in the kitchen. This is how I see it. And you are not sure, maybe you're gonna stumble on a knife or on a fork. So you need that kind of light so you'll not get hurt.
Wow, this is a really good analogy, and also maybe for the audience, maybe you could go a bit more into characterization tests, simply because this is the most common situation that people have, that they have a legacy code base with no tests. So you mentioned, I mean, these tests are essentially testing the system in a black box kind of way. So maybe you could say a bit more about characterization tests and tools, how they could be generated and how it even looks like, how it works.
Well, yeah, that's kind of tricky. So yeah, that's complicated as a question. Okay, I'll try to answer it as fast as possible, as easiest as possible. If you are talking, one of the tools that I know, for example, that is used mainly in JavaScript, especially when you do your snapshotting tests, it's actually Jest, if I remember well. Jest is actually, you run the test the first time, so you're gonna generate the output, and then when you run it the second time, it's gonna validate that the new output is actually equal to the last output. And if you need to, let's say, to create a new snapshot, you need to delete the last one. So this is how usually it works. There is many other tools that is doing it differently, but this is the easiest one in my opinion. That's why I took that example.
Yeah, definitely a good point. And I see, Oliver, that we also received a question in chat also about legacy systems.
Exactly. So I cannot read that, but the question is how to apply confident decisions on old legacy systems. More details, please.
How to play? Okay. Depending on before, if I'd like to say that you're gonna need two things. You testing, so you can be sure that what you do, you have enough confidence. So the confidence is right there, depending on how much did you test it, how much are you sure that you tested the whole system. And when I say about the whole system, is like, I prefer to say a part of the system that you mastered, and you're sure that you have all the confidence about it. And only the test can give you that. This is the first thing. The other one is going to be intuition, because this is really something that I shouldn't be saying, but that's how actually the real life when you are working with legacy system. The difference between a new system and the legacy system: in the new system, when you do something, you know that it's working. You have the test, you create everything and all the stuff. In legacy system, it's more intuitive, but the idea is moving from an intuitive way to, let's say, a practical way and more in engineering way. How do we do that? By testing as much as possible, and then by extracting this part and testing part by part these slices of the system.
And you're
I
probably
hope I answered your question.
Probably you're more confident if the dungeon master and the system expert are also around, so you can ask them. That probably raises that
so
too.
the result of the confidence that you're going to have is your understanding from them. That's for sure. And from that understanding, you're going to create tests. So that's why I took the shortcut to test. But actually, you're right. It started with them. It starts with them.
So before we go to the next question, have you ever encountered that you neither had dungeon master, no existing system expert, just a team of people that had to deal with a legacy system that somebody else created, and then you had to find a way to to fix it?
That's a tricky, yeah, it happens. It happens, especially if you have a system that is older than 20 years. So one of the joke that I found is like, I have one friend of mine that actually he was maintaining some kind of code, and then he happens to stumble to a piece of code that he checked who is the author. It was actually his dad, because he was working in that app too. So this is one example that you can have. I will not say what is the application, because it's one of the most used application for reservation, and I will keep chat about that application. So that's a very tricky question. So in that case, I'm gonna pass directly to testing. I'm gonna try to have characterization testing, snapshot testing. I'm gonna try to catch the input and the output of the system, like for a month. For this case, it will not be like for a day or two when I have the dungeon master and the system expert. I'm gonna do it for a month. I'm gonna try to analyze it for a month, and then from there, I'm gonna try to recreate a system like that one, who behaving the same way. And I will not use that system to. It's gonna be only in an experimental way to understand how the system is doing. And then from there, like I said before, DDD is like there to divide and conquer. So I'm gonna try to separate a subset of use cases, maybe by persona or maybe by something else. And from there, I think I can test them as fully as I can and clean them up, taking another slice and going there. But if you don't, like I said, you're gonna lose much more time if you don't have the dungeon master and the system expert. But that's okay. That's another rule to the game. So you need to do with it.
I just want to add here, I like how you described it. So essentially, when something is unknown and when you have no one to explain what's happening, the only thing that can be done is observing the system itself, the various inputs and outputs. Okay, they are a particular example, and then this means that we're going from examples to try to infer what's the general rule versus the inverse. I mean, if we had information, we could go from general rule to examples, but here we have to do the inverse way. And what you're trying to do is, when you're then designing the new system, you want to preserve behavior, but it will just be with a new structure. And that's where black box tests give us the biggest flexibility, because they only know the fully externally visible behavior and nothing at all about the structure.
Exactly. And actually, I'm gonna give you another analogy, because I like them. The first one is actually about TDD itself. TDD, when was created by Ken Beck, one of the rule is like, it's called triangulation, which is actually, it is triangulation. He used some kind of thing that we are actually using in every day. So how do we find somebody who is walking in the street with his phone? So we use, like, you have like some kind of some GPS stuff that is planted around the city. They're gonna try to find the three that are, the most near that person, and from that they're gonna try to figure it out the position. So this is a technique also we are using in TDD. And that's the same technique, but in a higher level that we are trying to do here.
Nice. I always I always wondered where triangulation actually came from. I always read it like and used it like, oh, triangulation, but now thanks. I know it's from the
You're welcome.
actual triangulation. That's great.
Well, actually, if you try, I think it's really, if I remember well, because I read the book, like in TDD, by example, you're gonna find actually he took like 2 pages describing, and I like it, the analogy, so that's why I remember it. So
Yeah, need to take it out again. It's been years. So we have another question. Let's have a look. So Nicolina also asks, have you encountered the third scenario in practice, acquired high understanding of the legacy system, successfully introduced new features, and started to clean up the system? Any tips?
Yes, actually, yes, it happens in the system that it was created like for 7 years, if I remember well. But in these 7 years, there were still like 2 developers that they started doing it. Well, actually, that's the good news. I didn't do it alone, and I never do things alone. That's one of the rules that you do when you are, let's say, in the craftsmanship community or the software crafters community. So what we try is actually we've done like a mob for 2 weeks for that, but we didn't clean up the system right away. We're trying to extract the stuff that we are sure that is going to take us like a day or 2 to clean up and clean it. Because like I said before, you have the business side, you have to give value also. You can reduce the value, but you never remove completely the value from the business side. So that's why you need to do it like what I tried actually to do it is like I negotiate some time. So it's like 1 day of a week that we're gonna do more programming to do that for like a month. And they told me, oh no, we can't. Okay, so I said, if we can't do that, well, actually the feature at some point they're gonna take you so much more, and actually they were complaining about slowness and many other stuff. So I said, maybe we can fix them. So one of the role also of the developers also to negotiate with business. And how to negotiate is actually exposing the issue, so they can also try in their side to understand what you are suffering from, because legacy is actually suffering. So it's not like I like suffering, but legacy, it's actually some kind of challenging code if we compare it to something that is completely new. You can build something new in like a week or 2, but to maintain a code, especially if it has like 10 years of legacy or something, 10 years of coding with different styles, because what you need to understand that every developer has his own style. Even those that agree on clean code, on the best practice and all the stuff, they're going to have their own style and their own vision of the stuff. So you need to have an open mind to understand that you are not alone. Everybody is smart, and even most of the time they're smarter than you. And from there, it's going to be very, very easy to do it.
It's actually also something we discussed last week, or what I encountered is if you tell the people you do an experiment, they're much more, or the business people, they're much more willing to actually agree. So if you say like, let's do an experiment and mob program like every week once, they're much more likely to agree to do that.
For a limited amount of time, such as, for example, you mentioned the ask, can we do, mob programming once a week for 1 month. And I really like how you mentioned the whole mob programming approach, that the whole team then starts understanding the system. And you mentioned that whole aspect about extraction. So instead of going immediately low level and like, let's fix the variables in the method, instead starting from the highest level of the system and maybe extracting the system even into parts, or trying to understand some kind of boundaries before zooming in lower level.
Well, actually, it's like in gaming. Actually, you can't attack the big boss right away. You need to do farming. You need to play. You need to understand how the game is, and that's why you need to do it slice by slice, and because also it's a small victories, and because you have these small victories, you're gonna continue to have the bigger one. So that's why you need to do it. It can be something really, let's say it's silly, like renaming variables, renaming folders, maybe moving that from that folder to the other folder. And I remember that when you do that, sometimes some people that they are really frustrated, they say you didn't do much, but they when they see that they say, oh yeah, you move it to that folder, so it should be clean. No, it's still as messed up as before, but because it's in that folder, everybody's like feeling safe. Yeah, he moved that, or I moved that from that place to that place. So it's like it's easy to move the things, and that's actually legacy creates some kind of fear of changement in most of the case. So when you take the first step and you say, okay, if it does work, okay, we win, everybody win. If it doesn't work, I'm wrong, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back and try different way to do it, and that's completely fine. So I think it's really linked to the culture of the company, or the organization there. Maybe it's another subject, but I think what we need to do is to create some kind of safe space to experiment. And that's how you usually do it. If you create that space, you're going to give people the autonomy to do these kind of stuff. And if they give you some kind of deliverable, like we cleaned that stuff, you're going to have your feature, don't worry about that. We have also our own stuff. We are doing that so we can continue to deliver you more feature. At some point, they're going to understand. They say, okay, do your stuff. I trust you, but don't fail that trust. And that's all.
Mhm. And also, I think what you mentioned with do it step by step, because what I mean, it looks like nothing, but it's similar to your habits. If you do every day a little bit, it starts accumulating, and after half a year, your code base looks much better than before, and you actually.
Exactly. That's what we call compound interest, actually,
Mhm,
if I
mhm,
remember well. So
mhm,
so it's like anything. If you go to the gym every day, you will not see the result after a week. You're gonna see the result after a year, maybe
mhm.
2 years. The same also if you are taking a diet and trying to lose weight. It's exactly the same.
And the
It's a
fun
small
thing,
habits. Everything is small habits.
exactly, and
TDD is actually a discipline, so it's a small habit. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. No, but the fun thing is you see long time nothing, and then all of a sudden a lot.
Yeah,
So it makes a lot of sense to actually just continue, even if you don't see that you ever will get through the woods of, of legacy code. At some point, you probably will get through.
if I'm trying to give an analogy, the highest performance, like the NBA basket players and all the stuff, it's like maybe you're gonna remember somebody that took the NBA cup for 1 year, but you're gonna mostly remember the one that keep it doing it for 6 or 7 years. So, like, if I take the example of Michael Jordan is actually took the cup 6 times. So that's why 6 times. So that's why everybody remember him. And
Consistency.
it's difficult to stay in the same shape like for a long period. That's actually true dedication, in my opinion. And legacy needs to do that, because you will not get the result like in a month or two or even a year. It's going to take maybe 2 years, or maybe less, depending on how many people they are engaged to do that. But if it is a team, I remember that I was in a team and we have like a system that have a legacy of tier, because everyone were engaged. Like we resolved all the debt in like 3 months or 4 months.
So
That's quite
Everything was cleaned.
impressive. Yeah, because sometimes it can take months, it can take years, depending on the team, the product size, and everything else. And another analogy, just to add to this, is we could view a legacy system as having a house where there's boxes all over the place, and there's one person who has memorized which boxes they've put where. The structure of the boxes is illogical, and anyone else, new guest who comes in, can't find it. But the person who's like the keeper of the house knows everything off by heart, despite the illogical structure. And then to start the cleanup process, when they engage a company which does cleanup, firstly, that company needs to move the big things and maybe, for example, firstly move things like what belongs in the kitchen, what belongs in the living room, etc. Like, do top level splitting, what logically belongs into the big rooms. And then when you've sorted that out, then maybe you can go like, what's the most important room, and do a bit more cleanup there, etc. So that way the person can still continue to use their house. They don't have to relocate to somewhere else, but it keeps on getting better day by day. So yeah, thanks. I really like the overall answer to this question.
Exactly. I like your analogy, because that's how I actually the first thing when you said, when you were talking about the boxes, I was thinking, okay, maybe I should put a label on it, naming
Yes.
them. So it's like naming is actually the first thing that should be done. Naming and moving, in my opinion, should be the first thing that we should be doing. The extract, the stuff, and all the stuff, it depends on the case. But if we do these things properly, it's going to be easier for after that.
I like that you mentioned that naming and moving, because naming is about, okay, how do we summarize the essence of something in one word, without going into all of that detail, what's inside, but what it is at the highest level. And then
Yes.
if we do simple clustering, so after we've
Mhm.
named things, and then in our directory, if we fix the names, when we see the names,
Yes.
we can then more logically match which names are clustering together. This means even if we have no idea what the bounded contexts are or anything, and no one knows either, we can do that like clustering algorithm, which we can also do since we're human in our mind. And then as clustering, that's when we're moving. And then we see the actual, maybe even emergence of the bounded context, possibly.
Exactly. So actually, that's where DDD actually helps. It helps for two aspects. So detecting bounded context and naming itself, like finding the right name. That's where DDD is actually helps, because if you know what that thing is actually doing, you can discuss with multiple people. How should we name it? You should name it X. No, it should be Y. It should be Z. Y, Z. Okay, we're gonna choose something. We agree on it, and we are sure about it. The most also dangerous thing that I didn't talk about it in legacy, and actually that's the thing that I hated the most also about legacy code, is like, you as a developer, you're gonna need some kind of space in your head to do a mapping between what the business say and what is actually in the code. That's the most dangerous thing. If I remember well, I think Eric Evans called that fractured language. And that's actually very dangerous, because the space that you need to think about how to deal with the legacy code, you are taking a small piece of that space to do a mapping in your mind. So you
That's
need to remove
very
that
limited.
mapping. Yeah. So, we are limited. We have like a finite, let's say, space in our head. So we need to clean up everything that to do our work well. So if you have that kind of space, it's going to create some kind of noise in my head, and that noise can be, let's say, can put some kind of dark shade on on how the structure should be. And sometimes when you remove that noise, and how you remove it, by renaming, by moving, you're gonna like it's like an opening, like a treasure. Oh, that's the case actually. Okay, so now I understand how it works, or maybe now I understand this thing where it should be go.
Mm. But for me, it's also the size, the sheer size. When you have a method like, I don't know, and that's why I always think it's also good to extract some part as a method and move it. But I see that there's danger with that associated.
There is always a risk, so that's why I think renaming and moving, that's why I was taking, they are the less risky thing. But like I said before, if you have enough tests, go ahead with the extract. I will go with the extract.
Yes, and just to add to this one about extraction, we can view it at levels. I mean, at the topmost level, renaming directories or renaming classes is the safest thing, and that's something that we could do top level without any risk to even figure out what's the purpose of the folders and the files. When we have those names, then okay, we can look at what are the methods inside, and firstly naming the method itself, even though that method is doing multiple things and having a longer name. But so let's first identify, okay, what are the broad responsibilities, even though there's multiple, and then breaking up that method. So yeah, I guess we can view it as different levels. It's like we firstly label the boxes, like a moving company. They label the boxes, especially the big boxes, cluster around similar boxes, and then we can go open each box inside and do extract methods.
You can do that. There is also something else that I do now that I remember, because we have usually you have like a limited time to do it. So usually I do two things. First, if I can do it right now, I'm going to do it. If I can't do it right now, I'm going to make a to-do to say that it should be done. And somebody else, when he took the let's say, I give that to somebody else, or somebody else going to check the code, you're going to see that there is a to-do. Okay, he's going to do it and remove the to-do. This is how I usually also I communicate with the people. Like, I don't need to say to them, hey, that thing, it should be moved. No, because if I say to them, it's going to take some space in their head. And that's not the thing that I'd like to do to myself. So that's why I make that command that in the right place. So when they say, okay, this thing should be move it. We're going to move it. We're going to rename it. And we finish. So it's like, it's a teamwork, like, so it's a team game actually. When you are developing a product, you can't develop a product alone, so you need like 2 or 3 people, or even more sometimes if you have a bigger organization. And this is how I communicate with people, so I can be sure that the knowledge or the information that I have in mind, or the action that I have in mind, it is not lost. And I know that somebody gonna take over, and he's gonna have every means that he needs to understand and to do the stuff.
You also mentioned something about the team, and I just think, like, if you have a company that has such a legacy system, how hard is it usually to get the people on a team to improve? Or I can just imagine that they're probably not the best people when it comes to XP practices, refactoring, testing, and I mean, isn't there like a really long time for onboarding people before they can actually start working and moving stuff?
Let's say, okay, that's okay. It depends on actually the position that I have. So it's like, if I'm really as a coach, it's going to be very easy because they know that I'm here to help them. If I'm like, let's say, a lead developer or something, like a lead team or the staff, I'm going to start with the younger one. Why? Because usually they tend to learn faster than the others. That's the first thing. They are open-minded more than the others. And from there, I'm going to try to propagate that to every team member. I'm going to take my time to every team member. So I'm not saying that that's something bad or good. When I'm trying to say that in a team, usually you're going to have like a senior developer. Usually the senior developer is somebody who have a lot of knowledge. He got like less time to learn because he have something else and other stuff, but in the same time he got that eye that can criticize the thing and know exactly where is the benefit and where is the downside. But in the same time he have the advantage, the younger one have the advantage that he's attracted to everything new. So it's combination of the two when you have a team. So that's why I start with the younger one, because I'm bringing something new, and then from there I'm going to advocate to the senior one. And usually it works, especially if you are showing that your hand, that you are here to help, you're not here to miss everything. And that's fine.
Yeah. I just could imagine that if the dungeon master is still around and in the same team, that he probably is not very happy that you come and say, well, maybe we need to adopt a bit.
Well, I'm gonna grab him to take a coffee with me, and we're gonna discuss about something else different. So he can start to trust me. Or maybe also I will take much more time with him, because I know he's the dungeon master, so he has the power. So if I invest time with him, I'm sure that he's gonna be my ambassador after that. And that's a good really tactic that I usually use. When I found somebody who is like upset and all the stuff, I say, okay, maybe I can try to get him to understand my point, and maybe I can invest time for him. And I remember that one of the team that I worked for, it's like I worked with a developer that have like 20 years of experience. He was like, everything that I was talking about, he say no, 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 no. So I took him from the thing. They said, okay, so you don't like what I say? Okay, that's completely fine. So I will let you read this article or this article, and let's try to discuss that after that. So the thing is like, are we not showing him the same? Are we not trying to teach him something? I just showed the let's say the link to the stuff so he can figure it out himself, and then he goes back with a lot of questions why they should do that, and I say, okay, they do that because, and at some point he becomes maybe the most talented one, especially in TDD and all the stuff, more than any other developers. So it's really, it depends on the person also.
So you basically spark the interest in the topic, and then I mean, because they usually have a lot of experience and knowledge, most of the stuff we try to show actually makes sense. So they're not dumb. So if they read it and understand it, well, it most likely leads to a better solution in the end.
So that's the thing that I always say. Don't they, most of the time the people, they are smarter than you think. Most of the time, always. So assume always that they are smarter than you think, and it's usually the case. Do it that way. The only difference between you and them is actually that they didn't know about it for a certain reason, because they've been in a context or something, but they're still smart. So if you show them the way, they're gonna pave the way, like even better than you sometimes.
And they become the biggest advocate of what they actually didn't like in the beginning.
Yes. That's the biggest victory that you can have, especially as a coach.
That's when you finally feel accomplished as a coach, when that happens.
Yeah, so you can say, okay, bye, I'm going. You don't need me anymore.
That's
you have already somebody.
My life is just great.
Yeah.
So we still have a question here. I will briefly show it. So we have here Hussein Imam. If we are doing a full scenario testing for the legacy code, can we introduce some mocking for third-party integration calls, for example, or we should have full all real calls scenario?
Okay, that's a very tricky question. Depending on the level of confidence. If I'm not confident enough, usually I'm gonna do all real call scenario. This is the case when I know that the legacy, I don't master anything, I don't know anything at all, and it's something that is really very complicated. I'm gonna put the input, get the output. I will not care about mocking stuff. When I start mocking, is like I have some kind of little kind of confidence. So the ideal thing is actually using the mocking party integration, because it's going to be faster for the feedback loop. But if I'm in a legacy system that is so complicated, I don't have enough knowledge, I don't have nothing at all, and everybody is not confident about how it works, I'm going to do the all recall scenario.
Yeah, and sometimes, I mean, depending on the language, maybe there's not even a mocking mocking framework around you could use. You would have to.
Well, that's also something that I'd like to advocate for. If you choose the language, be careful. If there is no testing suite, don't use it. There is something weird with it. Sorry.
Exactly. Then we can't even do safe refactoring. We can't move on. So then better maybe to switch to a different team or company which has a modern languages which do have testing. And the other thing that you mentioned here about how level of confidence impacts this. In order to use mocks implies having expectations about how something works, like a certain subsystem.
Exactly.
If we have no idea what even the subsystems are or what they're doing, then it is impossible to make a mock because we have no expectations. And we could actually make wrong mocks and have false sense of security if we do it prematurely. But if we take the whole system end to end, and for example, even having UI tests or something like that, driving the system end to end, and even when everything is closely coupled to infrastructure, like to a file system, databases, etc., we could still do logging as the most primitive way that we know, especially logging where we see some possible boundaries, like what are the subsystems. Let's say we know the subsystems, and then to log what are the inputs and outputs between each subsystem. And then later, when we do go to mocks at some point, or to be more generic, the word test doubles, some form of test doubles, at least we have gathered some even realistic input data about the behavior of that system. So then our mock will actually be more correct. And even if we're adopting that whole, I guess, top-down approach, so we firstly start off with the system as a black box with end-to-end, then the next level could be what are the subsystems, and introducing mocks, and now our tests, okay, at subsystem level, and then going downwards.
Yeah, so this is the first part of the answer. The other answer also, that's why, that's one of the reason actually, that's why I don't prefer mocking, especially in this case. I'm talking just in this case. The other also aspect is like people tend to forget that when you are testing a unit test, you are validating the architecture that you have. What I'm trying to say is like, if I test the whole system, I can move any part of the whole system. I will try to run my test and everything should be okay. But if I have a unit test for a small piece, if I move that piece, I'm going to need to move the test. So they're going to have some impact in the test. So in a new system, that's okay. But in a legacy system, that's why I don't recommend a lot of unit tests in the legacy system. I prefer a whole system stuff. So you can clean up, taking the slice, the bigger part, or maybe smaller part, and then and then the smaller part, then we do mocking on it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, and to add to your point, it might also be impossible to write unit tests. So just as an example, if in the code, if there's a call to like date time now, or any form of non-determinism, then we cannot write a deterministic unit. We can't. The test can't be deterministic, so we can't get a unit test just by definition. And it's good that you mentioned how unit tests are, since they are white box, are dependent on the architecture in a sense. Exactly. Because let's say if someone is doing clean architecture, which probably is not in this legacy system, but let's say in clean architecture, someone would be targeting use cases with their unit tests. Other people might decide to target domain entities directly with their unit tests. And then what would happen is, if the architecture itself is messed up and we're writing unit tests for that architecture, then later when we go to a new architecture, then we have to change all of those unit tests. So we just wasted time.
Exactly. It's a huge impact, actually. So it's like you need to find the right, let's say, the right granularity of the test. So if it is too small, it's gonna make your architecture or your design, because sometimes it's only a design inside that architecture, pattern design or design pattern, and it's gonna make that part very rigid. You can't move it as you'd like. If you move it, you're gonna break something. You're gonna need to move a lot of stuff and all the stuff. So there is actually, like, in the same time, if you make the test too big, you are testing too much stuff. You're not focusing enough. So you need to find the best, granularity. It's not too big, not too small. So that's the thing. So when you see the pyramid of tests, it's like, make as much unit tests as you like. Yeah, that's a very nice idea if you are speaking in theoretical way. But if I do that, I'm making my architecture like I don't know, like something that we can't move at all. We can't miss it. We can't touch it, because if I touch it, I'm gonna break 200 tests, and it's gonna be a mess. And how I should do it, I can't. And then you stop doing any kind of stuff in improvement design, when I'm talking about design, or when I'm talking about architecture itself. So in the case, I'm going to take the architecture, the hexagonal architecture. What I usually trying to test is, like, the unit test is only for use case service. So it's like these, because I know that these one, they're going to base it on the contract and all the stuff. I'm going to do it for the domain object, if I have some kind of domain object. And then I'm going to use like small integration tests for the others, if they are manipulating database, if they are especially when I'm talking about adapters. And I'm gonna the big tests, they're gonna be a whole scenario for all the structure. I'm gonna stop right there. No more tests more than that, because I'm sure that these one, they are covering everything that I need to do. And I know that if I move that class, is going to be one test that's going to be moved. I'm going to move it to that side, and that's all. This is how I usually see things. It's not, like I said, I'm not like it's one perspective to see things. I know that there is many different perspectives, and most of them, they are right also. So I'm not thinking that I'm right, but
I do a similar approach due to the stability. So targeting whether someone calls it use case handler or application service, essentially those user ports on the hexagon, that is what is most stable. And you can transitively cover, there can be multiple classes which are involved, but you're transitively covering. So later on, it doesn't matter where those internal classes go, the test essentially remain stable. So yeah, I guess to summarize this question, based on everything that you mentioned up to now, it comes down to confidence and stability, that we're starting with black box tests to have full freedom to move stuff around, to move those boxes inside, and then as we move boxes and as we stabilize reach the new architecture, then it can make sense to, for example, do unit tests when we're having I guess the new architecture emerging.
Exactly.
Great. So I guess we're actually already at the end of our stream. So thank you, Khaled, for that very interesting presentation and also discussion. I really liked it. Do you have some last words?
Yes. So thank you for inviting me. Thank you for everything. It was a great time for myself also. And yeah, if you'd like to connect, like I said before, you can you can check the QR code. That one is actually directly linked to my LinkedIn. Hey, see, cool stuff also. I know cool stuff. And you have my website also, referenced on my LinkedIn page and all the stuff. So feel free. Usually I accept all the connection. But if you are a recruiter, don't do it.
Well, that's a good warning. Yeah, I also want to say thanks a lot from my side as well. What I found interesting in your talk is that not only did you cover the technical aspects regarding DDD, but also how to handle the human factors involved in transforming legacy projects. So I think that this will be useful for our viewers, and yeah, feel free to share this also along with your colleagues. I think this talk will be useful for many people because everyone is many teams are struggling with legacy projects. So thanks again.
Lots of people problem usually.
Yeah.
So, and well, if you want to continue to learn how to deliver quality software faster, well, then follow us, techexcellence. We do lots of these talks. So meetup, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and GitHub, of course. And our sponsors again, Optivem, and partners is QE Unit. So see ya and bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks a lot.